what you're talking
that I never knew about.
I mean, that Farm Bureau book is pretty good too. It's got all the deadlines you have to meet.
What?
The Farm Bureau book they put out, I just looked at it today and it tells you like June 24th, you gotta have this done or that done.
We have it, they give us a calendar.
Yeah, they?
You guys good?
Yeah.
Alright. Call the April County Council meeting to order, please. Pledge allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. He's got the lucky drill.
Lucky, huh?
Alright, roll call. Mr. Costello.
Here.
Mr. Weir.
Here.
Mr. Somerville.
Here.
Mr. Bush.
Here.
Mrs. James, I'm here. Mr. Dreer.
Here.
And Mr. Brown.
Here.
Alright. First we have the approval of minutes. We have a special meeting from March 4th. And we also have minutes from our regular meeting on March 8th. Are there any additions or corrections that need to be made to either set of the minutes? Alright. I would entertain a motion to accept them if there are no corrections or additions.
Motion to accept. Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Bush, a second by Mr. Brown to approve the minutes from March 4th and March 8th, 2021. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Minutes are approved. Right. Next we have the Treasurer's Report. Florinda has also included the Trust Indiana interest amounts for the year. Does anyone have any questions regarding the Treasurer's Report? All right, please note that we have received the report for April. All right, and we also have the comp time report. Are there any questions or concerns, comments for the comp time report? Any questions? Comments? Okay. All right. Please note that we've received the comp time report as well. All right. We have one transfer of funds tonight. And that is from the Economic Development Council. Do you want to go ahead and explain that one, since I know you guys were listed also down farther, but it kind of goes with the transfer. Yeah. Thanks, Roxanne.
Hi, I'm Roxanne Sky. I'm the president of the Economic Development Council. We are looking at doing this transfer as we had used that as for RGL. They were a company that we used for some that advocated with us to the State House, help us with connections for companies, defense, different things like that. And we're looking at wanting to change that over to our salary so that it gives us some negotiating power for our salary for our new economic development director.
Would your new director be doing some of the jobs that RJL
Yes.
previously did?
Yeah, I did change some of the job description, and I was going to add some of those items on there. Understanding the, doing some State House. The person we are looking at has done a lot of that, getting a voice at the State House. being able to make those connections, so that we feel like with him having that experience, that would give us an opportunity not to use an outside source for that. So is why we was looking at doing that.
Okay.
Roxanne, you guys haven't used the RJL for several months now, correct?
Right, yes.
Back in maybe, was it August? July? maybe?
Last year, yeah. So we hadn't been using those, just at that time wasn't getting what we thought for the money that we were doing, on this. But, with the person we are looking at, we had discussed even with some of the references and stuff, and that was one of the things that they said they didn't have a voice at the State House, and they were able to make that be known in their county, being known in the State House. So then that in turn help us in other different situations and get us possibly an investment with companies looking at us.
That would help with the salary too.
Yes.
This would put it what at? That RJL was at 30,000?
48.
48, so it almost puts you, would that be 90,000?
So yeah, like I say, we weren't really gonna want to, use all that. Just that's going to give.
Are you still in negotiations then with
We
salary
haven't
talks?
even started
Okay.
with him. He is offering, say that he wanted, close to about 100. We are wanting to start lower than that, of course, and wanting to be able to negotiate if we have to. Not only just maybe the first year, but maybe do that on a step-up salary, on a different years with a contract. But it does come with lots of probably at least 20 to 30 years of experience in economic development.
This the guy from Texas? Or?
Yes. So, come, like I said, all of our recommendations or references that we checked comes very highly recommended. Has been able to get, jail facilities, able to get industries, ag. So it's all in a rural area. So comes with a lot of, background in getting economic into small communities. So it's not just, that he's been in bigger towns, but he does like that small rural area. Not only that, he's very involved in the community. He does a lot of broadcasting of sports. Just overall around this is what we see. So we feel it could be, not that Dylan did, he got us where we are. We're, thankful for what he's done. This person would probably jump us way out ahead, where our other individual that we had would probably put us behind where Dylan would be at. We did have two other candidates. One is currently making 100 and didn't want to move and did not have any excitement, had no enthusiasm, so we didn't, go with them. Another person that we were getting ready to do a Zoom interview declined because of the salary. Yeah.
Well, I think they've worked very hard on this, and they've got a real good prospect coming in. I'm definitely all for it. I'd like to make a motion that we do transfer that money to the other line item for them to be able to hire someone.
Okay. Do I have
I'll
a second?
second it.
Okay.
Appreciate you.
I have a motion by Mr. Dreer and a second by Mr. Bush. Is there any further discussion?
If this amount doesn't satisfy, you still want to hire this person, how will you go hire? You have to do an additional appropriation?
What we were thinking is we would probably have to, look at budgeting for next year.
Okay.
That's kind of where we would probably want to come back, because we want to make sure you guys are okay with us doing that. Even though we have it in our budget, we want to make sure you guys feel comfortable with that.
And that's a good, an additional would basically be coming from their own funds, because
Right.
economic development is separate. It comes from the local income tax. So whether we take it, give them more money or give them less money, it's still in their budget. They just put it basically in their account to save it back for another day. So they get what they get.
And
So
that
we'll just have
is
to
the
move the
only
line
other
items.
thing with him, he does want us, I mean, he is adamant that we're going to be doing a strategic planning that would be out for the next, 5 to 7 years. That will be a plan that will be working as a committee, as a council. So he has other things that we have to commit to too, just so that we can give him that background, and that we do have the funding to be able to do that. So.
I just for a conversation piece, I did go out and attempt to look at what an average person might make. The high is 140,000, the low is 52,000. In our area, it's $70,940, and it says Indiana ranks 34th out of 50 states. So I mean, we're kind of down at the bottom, and that's for an economic development director. And the base salary might be between 43,000 and 115,000, but they also have a little category as far as bonuses.
Yeah.
So I think if we negotiate, like you said, and maybe have some type of performance criteria on that, the more he does, the better his salary becomes. So I would just encourage that in your negotiating. And I'm sure you guys are already
Well,
working
and
on
that's
that. So.
one thing we're looking at, showing in his, start out at a small base pay, but then also show all, you guys have great insurance, vacation, that type of stuff that we
Right.
can base that on and
Benefits
offer
with it.
him instead of just the salary itself.
Okay. Any other discussion? All right, I have a motion by Mr. Dreer, a second by Mr. Bush. All those in favor of transferring the professional services into salary for economic development, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. All right,
Thank you, guys.
transfer is approved. Thank you. All right, that was the only transfer. So next we have our additional appropriations. Our first additional is for $6,200 for the sheriff sale. SRI is now conducting all sheriff sales at $100 per sale.
This wasn't budgeted, and it should have been, because they switched over from last year.
Did they switch over after budget here?
Right,
Okay.
we switched over after budget time, so they didn't request this, so, they just started doing it this year. I mean, they started last year, but this year's our full year that they're doing.
Okay.
We have that sale just once a year, is that correct?
The sheriff's sale?
Usually
No,
once a month.
it's, like once a month.
Once a month.
Mhm. Like mortgages and stuff like that.
Anyone else have questions? Anyone have any thoughts, recommendations?
Is that $100 per transaction? Is that, okay.
Per parcel, yeah.
Is that tagged on to the price of the people's buying, or is that tagged on, do they pay that 100, or?
I don't know. Mike's here, I can go see if I can go get him.
Typically, there's a sheriff fee that's added on that the plaintiff, the bank has. Normally, when you go to these, the bank ends up being higher. I mean, that's just the reality of it. And they have to pay normally a $200 sheriff fee to have the sale. So in a sense, it's recouped. I'm not sure how you exactly account for the $200 that comes back in, but
This is just what SRR charges.
Yeah.
I don't know. I
yeah.
know that they
But
have
there is a
fees.
sheriff fee on top of that that's paid typically by the lender.
And next year it'll be
the
requested
budget.
in their budget.
Would anyone like to entertain a motion? No.
I'll make a motion.
I have a motion by Mr. Somerville. Do I have a second?
Oh, make, second.
Right, on the charges for this tax sale, or sheriff sale, the charges, I know that SRI, we pay them this. but
They get half of what is paid in.
That's what they were requesting.
Oh, this is, that's for the whole year.
SRI, yeah.
Yeah. They only get half of sales that we actually do, so that's an estimated amount.
Okay.
Oh, that's
there's that
asking for the year, Mike, is that what
For
you
the-
said?
paying us
for all of it.
Okay.
Yeah, just because we never know what's going to be. But this year, I can tell you, we've already sold more this year than we have the past 3 years.
All right, I have a motion by Mr. Somerville, a second by Mr. Weir. Is there any further questions? Discussion? All right. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no. All right. Appropriations approved. All right. The next additional appropriation is for the salary study. It is, we actually approved this amount back in 2020. We had transferred it out of, we had approved it, and then the commissioners had transferred it out of a line item that they weren't going to use. However, the invoice did not come in before the end of the year to get it paid, so we have to reappropriate it now.
So this appropriation is from the commissioners?
Is that
Yeah,
Tim's
Tim.
signatures?
Tim's signatures.
It just says department for Maine County. I didn't know that was a department,
Please make it last.
Oh. So yeah.
That's terrible.
We they had the money, however, since the invoice wasn't there, we couldn't pay it out, so we just have to approve it again.
Motion to allow.
Okay.
Second.
Did I get a second?
Yep. I have a motion by Mr. Bush, a second by Mr. Somerville. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no.
Aye.
All right. The appropriations approved.
I just think it should have been left to the department heads. I think it should have been left up to the department heads, that's why I'm against it.
To just do in each individual department on their own study?
Yeah.
Okay. The next additional appropriation is for the EOC. It is $48,695. It says the siren on State Road 71 was destroyed back in November of 2020. The county just received payment for the repair from our insurance company, and they need to move it back into the maintenance and repair line to replace the siren. And the next page is a copy of the documentation for the check that they received. So Mark is here if you have questions, but it is so that he can get that fixed from the insurance proceeds.
I'll make a motion.
Okay. I have a
Second.
I have a motion from Mr. Bush, a second from Mr. Weir. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no. Appropriations approved. The next additional appropriation is also for EOC. It is $2,000.
I'd like to remove that one.
You want to remove it?
We had LABC meeting last week, and we're able to move it, that money was back for, so.
Okay.
Return it.
Okay. So scratch that one up. Was the grant document also behind it? That went with the.
Yes,
Okay.
it's for an exercise. We are not going to be able to get that exercise done this year, and hopefully we'll do it next year.
Okay. Keep that together. Thank you. All right, our next additional is for the amount of $6,751.27. This is for the liability insurance for the highway department. Their insurance has increased from 2020 to 2021, and unfortunately, their increase comes after our budget hearing, so they could not budget for it.
Does it ever go down sometimes?
Actually, I think the liability insurance went down for the county portion, but it went up in the highway department. So it's just unfortunate that it's in different funds, so it doesn't necessarily
Yeah, right.
balance each other out per se. But
Actually, I did call on that.
Yeah.
They said it was due to a vendor change on that increase.
okay. So
What did you say?
it's a vendor change.
Oh, okay.
So when we switch vendors, it caused the increase. But
They decided to go with the higher cost vendor.
No, it was lower cost vendor by like 30,000. Unfortunately, though, he priced the highway department slightly higher than because of all the equipment they have.
is that correct, Anita, that the part that comes out of the commissioners fund, their account, it decreased?
Yes.
Okay. But this is highway fund, so we have to.
How can we change vendors?
How can we change vendors?
Yes, that was a vendor change, right?
Yeah, the commissioners, they were expecting an increase, I believe, with their current vendor, so they went with the other one to not have as big of an increase. So it,
Okay.
Well, overall, there was a decrease overall, but just
By
in this
30,000?
department, there was an increase, but overall, it was an overall decrease.
By 30,000, they said?
Yeah.
Yeah. So overall, they saved money, just this one department had an increase for its specific.
yeah.
I would make a motion to approve it.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Costello, second by Mr. Brown. Is there any further discussion? All right, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no. All right, appropriations approved. Our next appropriation is for the Surveyors Perpetuation Fund. He is asking for the $15,000 for professional services. This is what he came and spoke with us about before. He's taking it out of his funds that he currently has. So,
I'll make that motion to approve.
I'll second.
okay, I have a motion. Oh,
I'm sorry.
what? I have a motion by Mr. Weir and a second by Mr. Brown. Is there further
Yeah,
discussion?
Ron's back here, isn't he?
Yeah, Ron's
Oh, right there. Ron, is he under contract for that, or is he just?
We don't have a signed contract yet. John Spur has a contract. He's fine with it, so we're not doing anything until you guys bless it.
Okay. But he will eventually have
You will
one.
have a contract.
Okay.
All right. Any further?
How many of those cornerstones are you talking about doing?
Well, we have to do, by law, we have to do a minimum of 5% a year. We hope that we can exceed that because there are a great many of them out there that we won't be able to excavate. We're not gonna go out and dig a hole in the middle of 63 if there's a cornerstone there, but we hope from historical records, then we can say, yes, those are there, we can move on from that. So that's the first step.
I was wondering why we couldn't use GPS to start doing this. for
Well, we will
corners.
eventually.
Well, I heard that we can't do it.
Huh?
I was told that the counties can't use GPS for legal descriptions and stuff.
We can't use the GPS, we have the paint GIS, because depending on where the satellite is, when they take the picture, the property line could be off from a few inches to 15 or 20 feet. So that's not a legal line that you can use in a court of law. You have to actually have the record.
They got equipment a lot better than that.
Yeah, but the ones that we're looking at will read off 6 satellites, and we haven't purchased those yet. They're very, very expensive, and the commissioners don't want to
Well, I was
delve into
told
that just quite yet.
we can't do it because of Old English law that the country's using now, and has been forever.
No, I'm not sure I follow. what
Some
you're
rules
asking.
that were made back in the 6th century and brought over here from Britain. Is that right? I mean, these cornerstones?
These are the cornerstones that the federal government set up.
I know, but this idea, I mean, of having a physical cornerstone instead of a
Having
GPS,
what?
instead of having a GPS coordinates, we're having
Well,
a,
we'll put those on there when we get to that point.
but why do we need the cornerstones? Well, I don't,
By law, we have to have them I mean, it's just like Mom was just talking here, they couldn't find the cornerstones on his mom and dad's property, and his survey costs were astronomical.
Yeah, and
That's where all legal surveys started, at the cornerstone monuments.
you would never lose that GPS coordinates.
Right, but we don't have them.
I know we need to get those, but I'm saying, why don't we start doing that instead
Well,
of
a
putting in?
licensed legal surveyor has to do that. Has to-
I understand that. I just don't understand why we need cornerstones anymore. Sounds like a law that needs changed to me. I mean,
It's federal law. so
I know,
don't
I know, but
All right. I have a motion by Mr. Weir, a second by Mr. Brown. Any further discussion? All right. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no. All right. Appropriations approved.
Thank you.
Alright, next we have an additional appropriation for CASA, for $21,200. It is additional appropriation for the 2021 year. It says the funds are from CASA matching and the capacity grant. And Jill's here, if we have questions. Oh, sorry.
Caitlin's already answered.
Caitlin?
Yes.
Caitlin.
So this is just the budget that I needed to submit last year for this year, and I
Okay.
wasn't sure how to, I did it wrong basically, so the matching capacity grant is from the state, and we do that every year, so it's cost of funds. So I'm just asking that maybe put in.
So is all of this from the grant? Or is it?
Yes,
This
it's
tax
rolled
only.
over, some of it's rolled over, and then this year we're actually getting, I got more in my capacity grant than originally offered.
Okay.
So I'll get $13,715.
Okay, so part of it's what you didn't use last year, and then 13,000
Correct.
new.
Yeah. And 10 grand of that is for my part-time staff advocate.
Okay. So she needs it appropriated into her account for her expenses. Does anyone else have questions for Caitlin? No? Okay. Okay.
Motion.
This is a new money that she's requesting. This is money that is already out there in her grant. She just needs it appropriated into the cost of funds so that she can start using that money.
Okay. I have a motion by
I don't see any problem with it. I
Mr.
make a motion to approve it.
Okay. Brent motioned it.
Oh,
You
I'm
want to second it?
I'm sorry, I will second.
It's okay. It
that.
was.
I did not hear the motion.
Alright. I have a motion by Mr. Bush, a second by Mr. Costello. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no. Alright. Appropriations approved. Thank you, Caitlin. Alright. Next, we have the E911. Anita is here to explain the overtime.
So last year during budget hearings, Mike asked for a part-time E911 person because we are going over every single pay period. He has not been able to hire anyone, so I want to leave that open for right now, hoping that we find someone. But until then, the money that we have in that account, I just want to take some of that and put it back into overtime so I can pay overtime. I average about $1,600 per pay period on overtime for that. But we just haven't had anybody apply.
The
So we're just
full-time
really-
person, I mean, a part-time person gonna be able to cut that all out?
Yes.
$40-some thousand
Yep.
dollars?
Mm-hmm.
We just paid what, we had to pay what, 60-some or something?
Yes. And that was due
62 or
to,
something like
that was due to us finding out that we were paying them
Right.
incorrectly.
But we don't have enough personnel down there. I mean, for the money that we're spending here, we can hire a person.
Right.
If that's what he needs.
Yeah, but we just haven't been able to hire somebody. We've advertised and nobody's coming forward, so I need to use that, I need to put that back into overtime for a little while until we can hopefully get someone.
But sometimes it's hard to get a part-time person, that's what I'm saying, is maybe we should, if the need's there, maybe we should look at a full-time person, because more people are.
it's 34.
It's something, I think if you ask Mike, I think he might tell you as well that.
I can't hear you, RJ, I'm sorry.
Randy, I think if you ask Mike, he might even vouch that some of the dispatchers could use an increased salary, and that could maybe attract, maybe more part-time or more full-time too. But it's something
Who keeps
now-
track of those hours?
I monitor them. I mean, they do 12-hour shifts. The thing that gets us is when we did that research, in a 7-day time period, anything over 40 hours is considered overtime. Well, in 1 week, they have 5 12-hour days. So that's 64 hours. So we have to accommodate and pay overtime for anything over that 40, and then the next week they only work 2. So they only work 24. And it's just the way the shifts roll. So that's where we're getting stuck. But unfortunately, I mean, we can't hire anybody. We're still looking for a jail or 2, and it's just, we're not competitive pay right now, and we just lost one, so.
So Anita, on this overtime report, this one here,
That's a comp time report.
comp time report.
Yeah, that's comp time, different,
That is
totally different, yes.
Okay. Because it said E911 on here, so I was wanting to
They
make
don't
sure.
get any comp time. Those
Okay.
guys don't get any comp time.
Okay.
Did they used to, Anita?
No.
I mean, it's
No.
probably just in the rise this past year, it's been a long been a problem.
Right, yeah. What used to happen is they were just getting straight time for that entire time.
I see.
And that's why we had to go back and pay them the overtime rate. Because we were not aware that they were considered civilian employees, not like the sheriff was putting them in as the sheriff deputies and the jailers. They have to work 171 hours in a 28-day period, and that's what we had them on, which they can't be in that. But that was no knowledge to us. It
And
was
we weren't
not
the only county
intentional.
that had done that, right?
Right.
I would say, I think it was something that came about like as a awareness program, basic, or awareness that multiple counties were recording it incorrectly.
Mm-hmm.
So we were just doing it as though they were part of the sheriff's department, and the state doesn't see it that way.
Yeah, we found the law that they consider them civilian employees.
We really need to work to get a handle on that somehow.
Most definitely. Yeah.
Is there any word on when that salary study will come back? I believe the sheriff department was included in that. Right?
Yes,
Correct.
they are included in it, but I don't have a date. It should be coming soon. I can email them to find out if we can get an update.
Maybe that can coordinate with maybe looking at the salaries.
He needs to speak up.
Just,
He'll get old one of these days, not be able to hear.
It's coming, Randy.
Want a microphone?
Huh? Yeah, give me
Want a microphone?
Yeah, bring it up.
Maybe they're gonna have to learn how to read lips or get a hearing aid, I don't know.
I'm just gonna sit with you guys.
Sit there.
I talked to Allison and she said projected end date is end of May, beginning of June, and we are on target.
end of May, beginning of June, okay. Thank you. Does anyone have any other questions for Anita?
It's sad, but we gotta pay it, so I make a motion to go ahead and allow it, but we need to get a handle on it.
Okay, I have a motion, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Dreer, a second by Mr. Brown. All those in favor of the additional appropriation for E91 overtime, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. All right, appropriations approved. Thank you, Anita. Alright, our next two kind of go together. The Trails Grant Fund. The original one is the $57,280. That is their balance from the previous year. They're asking to have that moved forward to 2021 because they did not spend it. The other additional appropriation is $25,411.60. That is the amount that they've received back from the grant. So it needs put back into their line item. However, like when we originally agreed to the grant, it was that we were basically fronting them the money, and when the grant money comes back in, they would reimburse us. So from my understanding is that the $25,000 amount is money that we're basically getting paid back.
Goes back to the channel.
Yes, so we can reduce the $57,000 request by the 25 because they're paying us back for part of it. Is anyone here from the trails?
Yeah, well, I'm not sure what it's about.
We had the request for, it says monies for 2020.
Oh, because it was in the grant fund.
Yeah.
But actually, they're not.
Right, so if we approve the 25, then we can need to lower the 57, or,
Well, I mean,
yeah,
so the 57 needs moved over, and I have applied to get reimbursed for what we've already spent from last year.
Uh-huh.
And that's the money that's coming in.
that's the 25,000.
Right.
Okay,
Right. And the
so,
whole amount still needs moved over. That's just gonna reduce that line even more. They both need to go to the same account.
but if I put them both in there, then you'll have,
Well, what's the credit?
no, that's not how they're asking for each additional.
Oh, okay.
That's what, I think we need to reduce the one to,
Think about it. 31,869.
Right. Right, so this is the year from last year. This. That just got received. Well, if we get out of that account, so I would say, I think it goes back into it. And then once that whole grant is done and reimbursed and everything, then we owe the county $50,000. They get $50,000 seed money in there along with our $37,000.
okay.
So she's going to put it all in?
So 37.5 plus the 50,000, so total you had 87.5 to start with. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay.
And we paid out the 57, because it's, paid out. No, I'm sorry, 57 is coming back over because.
Right, that's from
Yeah.
2020.
Yeah, it's coming over in 2020.
So 87, so you'd spent how much here? 87.5 is what you started with, and you had a balance of 57,280. So you'd spent 30,220 for 2020.
What was that figure again?
Which that 25,000 reflects because they only pay 80. They only pay 80%.
Okay.
So I submit for what we pay, but they'll only pay 100%.
Okay. So if we just move over the 57,280, that's what you need moved back over for this year.
It's been receipted into county general.
Okay.
See, this is moving it from county general back to the trails fund, which is not where we need to put it.
You wanna leave it in county general, that's what it's.
Yeah. So, okay, so we don't need the 25,000 then. But we need to do the trails grant fund for the 57,280. So that will give them the remaining balance of what they have left to spend.
No questions.
Yeah. Okay. So, we have one appropriation then for the trails fund for the 57,280 for their balance that they did not spend from 2020. And like Lynn said, a total of 50,000 out of that original 87 comes back. So, we just gave them the money so they can do what they need to do and then get reimbursed for it.
So she's gonna pull the 25,411.
Yeah, that's receipted into county general and it needs to stay there because that's where our money goes back into, I believe. So, that one gets crossed out.
So the 25,411 was the reimbursement to the county, to the money that we
Yes.
originally...
Yep. That's what's been reimbursed so far.
So calling that for Fund 8132 is not correct then? Or it doesn't need, we don't have to transfer it all then? Or I mean,
For
we
which
don't
one?
have an additional appropriation at all for that 25?
No. No.
I got it.
So I will need a motion for the $57,280 to put their money back in. into that
Motion.
fund.
Or is it a second?
Just so I'm not So basically, that 25,000 is gonna be a repayment of the 50? If you leave it in that line, leave it in.
So it's in county general, yeah, so it'll be
Okay.
towards your repayment of that
So
50,000.
when it's all said and done and I reconcile that account,
Yeah.
I'll only owe the county around 25,000.
Yes.
Correct? Okay, that's what I wanted.
Yeah.
I thought we were just gonna just keep it running.
No, because you had original money in that account, so
That's fine.
you'll just owe us back the 50,000, because the rest was your money. All right, I have a motion by Mr. Dreer. I have a second.
No second.
Second by Mr. Brown.
I'd just like to say,
Yep.
I'd just like to say, I think the trail committee has done a wonderful job down there. No one's been down to actually see what they've done. You might stop by because they really have done a great job. What she's in.
Oh, they had a wonderful event this weekend.
Oh.
I posted on Facebook, we had 190 people sign up for the 5K.
Just had 190 people sign up for the half marathon and 5K.
I was gonna come down and run that, but you didn't have an ice cream truck out in front of it.
They could just lead the way.
We had a guy do the half marathon, which is 13 miles in 72 minutes.
More power to them.
Wow.
That's why I called you, but I could never play phone tag, and I couldn't get you. So when
Next
you
year
were-
I'll be there,
All right.
but I won't run it in 72 minutes.
It took me an hour and
Pull that one.
45 minutes to run one time.
Wow, that's not bad either.
Okay.
It's the only one I ever ran, or ever will run. Ever.
My last marathon took me 5 hours and 10 minutes. And I had to walk a lot.
That's watching men smoke on TV.
All right, I have a motion by Mr. Dreer, a second by Mr. Brown for the approval of the $57,280 for the Trails Fund. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no. Appropriations approved. I'd still be out there. All right, and that is our last appropriation. The last one in your packet needs to be pulled for now.
Which one was
That's not one
that?
of them.
Comprehensive plan.
Oh, that one, that.
Did we
already
have one for
Needs
GIS
to go out
request?
of business or
We
something.
pulled it.
early.
Actually, we found out it needs to be paid by the assessor
Yeah, sorry.
We pulled that during the meeting?
Still got that one.
before the meeting.
Oh, okay, I printed it
That's
out
what they-
myself.
It's marked off?
Yep, no one's here. Okay, that is the end of our additional appropriations. We do have one more item in the new business. Judge Wesh and Prosecutor Ackerman are here. So.
We've got a whole group here for us, so, I'm gonna start us out. As you know, last year, or some of you know, sorry, some of you weren't here last year, but the court was able to secure some grant funding for opioid and substance abuse prevention, and we use that towards rehabilitation for our female offenders because we didn't have very many resources for that. So we've been able to use funding for that. This past year, we used part of that application to secure funding for a peer court program. We have a great need in this county, or at least it's my opinion, and I think Mr. Ackerman would agree as well, for services for our juvenile offenders. Those numbers continue to be high. The cost for detaining a juvenile and holding them in a facility is roughly between $100 to $120 a day, depending on the facility. We have many repeat offenders here in the county. And so one of the things that, and not only are they repeat as juveniles, but they also then are repeat offenders as adults, and then we deal with them in adult court as well. So one of the things that that was brought to us by Tia Hyde is a peer court program. She had learned about this program and went out and did some legwork and viewed the program in Danville, Illinois. I've got Katie Osterberg here with me, and she runs the program in Danville, Illinois. It's been a very successful program over there, and it's been running for a while. I believe your mother started it, is that what I heard?
She was one of the first.
So it's been a continuing program that has had great success, and so we would like to also develop a peer court, but we would like to use her model as a starting point, and then form that for whatever fits best for our county. So we wanted to have Katie come and talk to you about her program, so you can kind of get an idea of what this program is and how it benefits those juvenile offenders who are in that program. And then we'll go into the need and the money and all of that. But the grant was able to pay for a portion of this, so we'll get into all the numbers here in just a minute. But I wanted Katie to talk to you guys about the program.
Hi everybody, my name is Katie. I'm coming from Illinois, and I'm really happy that you are thinking about starting a teen court. I'm a huge supporter. So peer court in Danville, Illinois started in 1993. And here's how a peer court works, is you get referrals. When a kid commits an offense within a county, they are referred to the peer court from either a number of places, either the police department, sheriff's department, or the court system. And what happens is the kids have a choice in our program whether or not to do peer court, and that's really important with teens. Teenagers like to not be told what to do. They like to have agency, and giving them the choice to do it provides them that. So if they choose to do our teen court program and successfully complete it, and that is the key, is their charges are dismissed. They can move on without having a conviction on their record or going through the normal court system. Our program is a 3-month program. So a juvenile is referred to our program. I meet with them. We host a teen court night where about maybe 6 to 12 teens come and sit on a jury. We train teen defense and prosecution attorneys, and we're not determining guilt or innocence in our teen court. What we are doing is we are having the kids take responsibility. So our number one requirement is that kids have to take responsibility for their actions, which is where their choice is. Could they have made a different decision to get them out of that situation? That part of the responsibility is really important. So what we're deciding in a teen court session is a punishment. So it's more of a sentencing hearing. So the kid comes, they talk about their offense, whether it's retail theft, criminal damage, underage drinking, small amounts of marijuana or narcotics. Battery is a big one in our town. The fighting, domestic, things like that. Whatever a judge or the state's attorney would deem acceptable to send to a teen court. So they've already admitted that they've made a mistake in some capacity. They go through a teen court session where they have to describe what they did. They are asked questions by their teen attorneys. The teen attorneys then give a recommendation to the jury, the teen jury who's listening. The jury gets to decide what their punishment is. After they decide, they read the punishment to the offender. The offender then has the chance to accept it or to not accept it. Again, they get that very specific choice. If they accept it, they have 3 months to complete it. If they don't, their case is sent back to the regular court system. The kids, before they even go into court, they know what the punishment, the guidelines are. So they're already very aware of what they're signing up for. So typically kids always say, I agree, and they sign a contract. What the punishment is, and this is very specific to each community, right? In our community, it's community service work between 15 and 75 hours. We provide a lot of that, but if they're involved in a church, if they're involved with an extracurricular, sometimes the kids are able to individualize that and say, hey, I'm going to work before and after my practice with my coach to get some of these hours in. And they get to do that. With their church, they can get their hours there. But we offer a lot of the community service work that these kids do. And that is very important because we are connecting them to their community, right? We work with the Douglas Discovery Garden, the Danville Rescue Mission that houses homeless, Day Springs Women's Shelter, the sister organization to the Rescue Mission, who houses women and children. And so we go in there and we serve dinners. And then we eat dinner with them after we serve. We work a lot of hours at the Danville Area Community College. So we are the kids at this impressionable age of 14 to 16-ish. we are their first connection to DEC, our community college. They are able to go there, work in the horticulture department, do the events out there, and become a part of that community, which makes them more likely to access that when they graduate from high school. And so they do their community service work. They come back, they sit on our juries and listen to other cases and help determine punishments for other kids, so they get to see both sides of this program. They write apologies and essays, they pay restitution if necessary. We take them on a tour of our jail, or we did before COVID. I don't know when we're getting back in there, but we're working on with the deputies to kind of provide a different program for that. We do a Taekwondo class with our kids. We want to give them just a small introduction into a positive activity to become involved in, and then each kid pays a $10 court fee. Now again, upon completion of this whole contract, their charges are dismissed. We are a 3-month program. I don't know about your court system, but in Danville, we have kids who are wrapped up in the court system for a year, 6 months to a year, and then they're on probation for 1 to 2 years. As a teenager, you're over it, right? Within a couple months, like they should be able to put this behind them, and they're able to. So very quickly, and I'll take your questions if you have any, but I don't want to take up too much of your time. We have been in existence. We were one of the first teen courts within our country. So we developed this without a model to go based on. So we've evolved it based on the needs of our community, what's effective with kids. We did a study a couple years ago, and we went back since 1993 and entered every kid into our database through probation. So our court systems, how many times have they been into trouble? And what we found is that 83% of the kids who went through peer court do not have an additional conviction on their record, okay? Only 17% of the kids that were funneled through peer court committed a second, third, or fourth offense.
You mean regular court?
Regular,
You said
yeah.
peer court again.
Oh, I'm sorry. The kids, you're right, I misspoke. So only 83% of the kids that came through peer court did not have an additional conviction.
17% through the regular court system.
They went back through the regular court system for a second time. So our recidivism rate is incredibly low. When you talk to our assistant state's attorney in Vermilion County, the one thing I hear over and over, and I've worked with a lot of them, training them on how to refer to peer court, how to work with us, is that they don't see our kids a second time, right? Our kids that come, that they can get out of juvenile court and send to us, they don't see their names again. And that's important for a number of reasons. Number one, for the kid, right? They're able to take that responsibility and then move on quickly. It's a very quick process in the scheme of things. Number two, it puts the responsibility on the kid. We offer it, they have to take it, right? They have to show up, they have to fulfill that contract. So these kids are learning responsibility. They are learning job skills training with the community service work. We are serving, we are gardening, we are working events. We are learning how to communicate with people when we show up to an event. So those job skills are really important as they move forward. I'm a reference to a number of the kids that have gone through peer court. If they do a good job, put me down on your job application. I get calls all the time from prospective employers because we want these kids to succeed. But second, so the most important thing is obviously that these kids are not getting into trouble, they're taking responsibility, and then we don't see them again. Beyond that, it reduces the caseload for the juvenile court system. And that's really important because they're overwhelmed. They have the cases where they need to put the time and energy in. So what you're doing is you're diverting the cases that can do well in a different setting and allowing them more time to focus on the cases, the youth, the kids, the families that need that attention. And I really think that if you choose to implement this type of programming, in 5 years down the road, you are going to be able to look back and see that your juvenile crime has decreased. These kids take responsibility, they do an awesome job, and then they buy into their community. Because when you put time and effort into your system, you want to see it do better. And that's what we're doing with these kids. We are making them a part of their community, and then they want to see it do better. And it works. So, can I answer any questions about our program?
Can I touch on something real quick?
Yes.
We looked through the court cases from last year, just 2020, we pulled the juvenile files to see how many of those cases would be able to follow through and do this program. Approximately 60% of what goes through Jill's court could have actually gone through this program and been taken care of and still continuing to be in the court system right now. 60%.
And the 40% that aren't eligible to go through a teen court system are the cases that you do need to put more time and effort into, and this frees it up, and the resources that go along with your court to be able to funnel these kids and get better services and more intense services because they're not as overwhelmed with the kids that don't necessarily need them.
And I've actually touched base with both North Vermilion and South Vermilion schools. You may have heard a little bit out of it, Marty, because I know they talked about it the other day at the safety meeting thing. I've talked to the principals and the assistant principals at both schools and the junior high and high school in South. The administration is very, very perceptive, like taking this in because they've got so many things like truancy. We can take truancy cases, vaping cases, the fighting at school cases because they used to do ASAP. There's no ASAP program anymore. They can't get an ASAP person. So they don't have anywhere to put these kids to do something with them. So it's somewhere where they could come and they could learn a positive side of, instead of just beating the heck out of each other at school or something to that effect.
Who's in charge of, when they're doing their community service, who supervises them, or is it just, you get volunteers supervising? Or
Me or my staff.
Okay.
We do a calendar, so every time they come to court for their jury duty, we have a 2-week calendar, then they sign up for the activities that they choose to do. So there's a lot of flexibility in this, which adds to the success. We're not saying you have to be here this day, and this day. We're saying, here are your options, let us know when you're showing up. And then there's, consequences for not showing up, right? If they sign up for 4 activities and they don't show up, each time they don't show up, we add 2 activities to their contract, right? Because there has to be that consequence. But I supervise because I love it. The community service work is my #1 favorite part. This past year has been really hard, not being able to do as much of it. And then my staff, we all take turns supervising. We all kind of have our little niche where we like to go, and then we trade off and cover for each other. But we get to work one-on-one with these kids, and the kids get to choose, and depending on how you set it up, the kids get to choose what they're interested in. If they like gardening, they go do that. If they like serving food, they go do that. If they like working within their schools, we can help them set that up. We do litter pickups within our community. Then they stop littering because then they're picking it up.
So what's the cost of your budget for your?
Good. So my budget for our program, it's me. I'm considered part-time. We work a lot, but and then 2 other very part-time, $80,000 for us per year, which is. When I checked a few years ago, and don't quote me on this, but I think that the last time we checked that the cost of housing 1 juvenile in detention each year was between like $65,000 to $80,000 a year. And we work, my program in Danville, we work with approximately 100 youth offenders a year. Of those, 94 successful, typically we have 94% successfully complete the program. So maybe 6 kids a year we have to send back because they just refuse to finish for whatever reason. But typically we don't have that some kids take more work than others, right? Some kids I'm knocking on their door, begging them to come out. But the kids choose to do it. When you present them options, they typically choose what's in their best interest.
I'd like to commend you on taking interest in our kids today, taking great interest in our kids today. We have a lot of problems in our schools right now. It's a program we can definitely use here in our county. Get the kids while they're young and try to correct them while they're young, instead of letting them get out of school and getting in trouble and trying to do something with it.
Yeah, and we do get a lot of our referrals from the school district, so we work really closely with them. It's based on balanced and restorative justice. So when we take something and resources away from our community, we give them back. Last summer, summer before, sorry, COVID throwing me off, we had a group of kids who went on a spray painting spree around our city, right downtown. We have an old parking garage, and they tagged that really well, and it was not well done. It was really bad graffiti. They were just causing trouble. But one of the things we did is we worked with the downtown coordinator and we set up a day, and them and their parents, they came out and the parents stood there and watched them remove it. And so we're restoring what we damaged. You know, the restitution's the same thing. That's not always possible, but you know, if we can make those type of connections, it works. When you're fighting in school, you're taking those resources, so why don't you give back to your school in some way?
I appreciate you coming in.
Well,
Very
thank
good.
you so much for having me.
Yeah, very nice.
Any other questions?
Great
for Katie?
presentation.
Training is for that particular position. I mean, what is your background?
Really good question. Communications degree in college. I was a volunteer with Peer Court when I was a youth. So I was a teen juror and a teen attorney. I did a study in college on the effectiveness of teen courts because I've always believed in this program. As a teenager, I saw like, wow, like kids are telling me this behavior is not okay. You know, like that's a tough pill to swallow, right? So I've always believed in it. I did a study in college on it, and when I moved back to Danville after I got married, they offered me a position at the teen court, and at the time I did not take it. I was going to be a stay-at-home mom. 6 months later, I was bored out of my mind, quickly took the job, and 13 years later, I'm the director of it. My training, I go to a lot of them. I'm always trying to learn. I'm always trying to find out, you know, where the juvenile justice is going in our community, but most importantly, I learn from our kids. A lot of the program when we implement is based off of the feedback from the kids that we work with. If we give out like surveys at the end, well, what did you like, what did you didn't like, and if you know 90% of them are telling me that something is terrible, like we cut it. Let's find something else to do here because I want it to be effective for these kids. I want them to buy into it. So the things that we're implementing are based on what the kids are saying is working for them, makes them think about it. So most of my training comes from the kids we work with.
So you say 60% of the cases that we have now could have went through that?
Yes.
And then when you think about the fact that 80-some% of those 60-some don't ever come back through versus 17% of the 60-some% will if we don't do this, something similar to this. It's pretty astonishing.
And what people don't realize is I worked in the court at one point, and the amount of time that it takes to do these juvenile cases with the court, because you have to do all these state documents, everything, it's ungodly the amount
Is
of time.
juvenile court is something that you deal with, Judge? What? That's
Yes, and it's actually just mixed into my regular criminal days, because we have to use the same public defenders. When our public defenders tell you they're overworked, they are. They're not lying. So they have not only their regular caseload, but they also get juvenile assignments in between. I have to appoint attorneys for juveniles unless they hire their own attorney.
So would this reduce the number of cases that our public defenders have? Because I know at one time they were looking at having to add public defenders.
It could. Yes.
So I mean, it could potentially reduce
just
them since-
juvenile numbers, yes.
Right, but
Yeah.
I mean, since those cases are with the public defenders.
Yeah.
on the cost side of it, a juvenile that's goes through the normal system here in the county would end up, I guess, I don't know, is there like a jail or something? I mean, is that Vincennes or what?
We used to send our juveniles to Vincennes. More recently, we've been sending them to Vigo County.
Okay, so that's part of we have to pay for that. The
Yes, we do.
taxpayers in this county pay for
That's
the
correct.
incarceration of a child from this county to wherever the facility is they go.
That is
They're there
correct.
for a year. I mean, that's serious stuff there.
Yes,
That's,
and we not only send them to detention facilities, but we also have juveniles that we have to send to placements for treatment of different types, mental health, that sort of thing. And those can be even more expensive than just detention.
Does that include also like kids, some kids may not get sent to that, so they would get probation and an ankle bracelet or something like that? You have to monitor all that and pay for all that, and is that the
and
same
Bruce,
thing?
you can come on up too. since
Oh, I
you
don't
have the answers
I don't
on it.
need full explanation
No,
for it.
no,
I'm just
I was just
trying
gonna say that
see the positives of
the ankle bracelets are a little bit harder for juveniles because I could order them, but if the parents can't afford them, you're
Right.
setting that juvenile up for failure immediately because their parents aren't going to be able to pay for that expense. And a lot of our families, it's not an expense they can afford. So, you want to know more about the money.
Yeah.
You want me to tell them about the grant first?
Yeah, that'd be
Okay.
great.
All right. So with the grant, what we requested was $20,000 for a facilitator, $2,000 for outreach. So, you know, getting the word out to the community, reaching out to all the different places that we could potentially have community service for the kids and that sort of thing. And just getting the word out, maybe to companies and things like that. $3,000 for training and $5,000 for office supplies. And I was kind of just guessing because, you know, we've not done this before, so I was just kind of putting some numbers together. But so that's what we've got through the grant. So in talking with Mr. Ackerman, you know, the concern is, and you just saw it earlier this evening with having a part-time position, it is really hard to get somebody to fill a part-time position. You know, I think that you can agree with me if you think I'm wrong, but I think eventually this position will be needed as a full-time position, just because of the odd hours, because you're going to have a lot of evenings for the teen court or for the peer court itself, especially if you only have one person, plus someone who's supervising the community service hours and doing the meetings with all the families, coming to court, meeting with these families when they're finished at court, if this is the route they're going to go. So I think eventually it's going to be a full-time position, but I don't think that we're going to fill it with the right person if we are only offering it as a part-time position at this time. So that's why Bruce and I work together and we have a bit of a plan.
Okay, yeah, so you're talking about the peer report, that's in the evening then? Would be here at the...
Yes.
So I guess
for
not
the-
during school hours? Is that
Correct,
what-
it would have to be after school, yeah.
What I'm staring at is, you know, like the security and that would not have cost.
And it may not be here in this building.
Yeah, well, I was just saying,
Yeah,
if it
but-
was, that would just be a cost to consider, would be the security of.
We are currently holding our court nights. I rent a classroom in an old church, and our court nights are in the gym. Our city hall also allows us to do it, and we have an auxiliary police officer volunteer as time to come down.
So usually get volunteers for that. Annie just gave us a claim amount that we just paid for one child, $4,466.
So, first, thank you, Katie. I appreciate your time, and I'm glad we found your program. The 17% recidivism rate that Danville has is like unbelievable. I mean, it's amazing. You know, if I had to guess what our juvenile recidivism rate is, I would put it at 50% or higher. Okay, and then it depends, you know, if you calculate recidivism as I committed an offense and then I commit another offense, okay, that is recidivism. But if I then commit another and another and another and another, and we have some juveniles, and I can't get very specific because juvenile cases are confidential for obvious reasons because of the age of the person involved. But we have had some that have 4 or 5 or 6 cases. Okay, now there's going to be some kids that just don't fit this program. Okay, they just don't. The judge mentioned some mental treatment and some drug treatment. Some of those kids have a really tough road ahead of them and are placed in places, I think mainly in Indiana, where they may spend a lot of time, okay? And those will be very expensive, and I'm sure that claim would be small if you look at their cases. That might be a month. But juvenile cases, and I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole because I don't want to keep you here until midnight, but juvenile cases fall into 2 categories. There are status offenses and non-status offenses. A status offense is an offense because of the person's status, their age, okay? So if I'm 16 and I'm drinking a beer, that's a status offense, okay? Because if I'm 21 or 22 and I'm drinking a beer, assuming I'm not doing anything else that's illegal, it's not illegal, okay? So you get into truancy, that's a big status offense. We see a lot of that. The schools see a lot of it. I think the schools, and Tia has done a lot of work with them, but I think it's fair to say that they are excited about this program because there is a frustration that I think naturally occurs in these juvenile cases of what do you do and how can you reach these kids, you know? I mean, it's not uncommon. I'll take you through just say an average juvenile case. Nothing where somebody was hurt bad or anything like that. Just a general case. They will perhaps be detained, and what that means is an officer will take that child, usually to the jail or to the Clinton Police Department, contact the parents, hope you can get a hold of them, and then there will be an interview process. Sometimes they just have to go direct to either Vincennes, which has been very hard to get in lately because they've been full, or to Vigo County, which has been taking some of our kids now, which is really good. But you have an officer then that's going to take them there, all right? So you've got that officer now off the street, okay? The kid goes to detention, and then there's going to be a detention hearing held within a specific period of time. So maybe that kid will appear by Zoom, on television. More often, certainly always pre-COVID, they were brought up to court, okay? And again, hopefully the parents can make it, or they can be found and they come. And they would be appointed an attorney then. Okay, so you have a public defender, you have the court, you have our office, you have an officer already involved in this case. Once the public defender appears on behalf of the child, then they get dates, because if Annie here is 15 and I'm her lawyer, this case is not going anywhere today because I haven't talked to her, I haven't talked to her parents, and so we have to schedule that. If she's in detention, she goes back. Okay, and now I have to figure out as a public defender, not as a prosecutor, I can't talk to her as a prosecutor, but as her attorney, I have to figure out how do I get with her and figure this thing out. So the judge will normally set a couple of dates, okay? And they will come back, and we'll either have a trial, okay, a hearing where it's adversarial, and the judge will make a decision, or a lot of times they'll come back. Maybe this is only the second time now that the lawyer has been able to talk to her, so they'll meet, and it gets set for another hearing, and so it goes on and on. That's if the person is in detention. Sometimes if they're not detained, they will be given an order to show up at court at 9 a.m. and they don't. Or maybe they do with grandma, but not with mom and dad. Okay, and mom and dad are the parents, so now we got to get mom and dad there, but you're not going to do that today. So there's a lot to these cases, just getting them to the point where the judge can make a decision on it, okay? So I think the thing that the schools find attractive about this is one, they will have a resource that they can say, hey, we've got these kids who are truant, okay, they're not coming to school, they're skipping school, and they can refer them into this program. They have other problems in the schools. Some cases won't fit this, some cases will fit this, and honestly, some cases like this is designed for. You know, it would be perfect for on hopefully the first offense that's not a serious non-status offense. I mean, hopefully it's not a burglary or a gun offense or a drug dealing offense, something like that. So if we can reach them then, okay, I think the beautiful thing about Katie's program there in Danville is, as I understand it, they require the parents to be involved. Okay, that's a huge step. 2, they require the person, in order to take part in the program, to admit that I did something wrong. Okay, I spray painted the dugout. I did it, and I'm sorry. And now it's about, how do we solve this problem, and how do we fix what you did or what I did, and move forward. So you can move it forward on a much more expedient timeline. I think ultimately, and this might be a subject for a different day, I think ultimately, if this works, okay, and we only have really Katie to look to, okay, we can't go to an adjoining county and say, hey, how's yours working? Or, because they don't have it, okay, so we're really trying something new here. If you remember, a year or 2 ago, the judge and I came to you along with the sheriff, and I know there's some new faces here since then, but we brought up a program in Terre Haute to send men to drug rehab using some of the money the sheriff had in an account. And that program, at the time, we were literally renting rehab beds with that money. It's not taxpayer money. You can kind of look at it as grant money, but it's not that either. But it's not tax money. That program has its failures, but it also has some incredible successes. Okay, men who have been long time, heavy use, horrible addicts that commit other crimes to feed that addiction. And if I brought some of these guys in, and if you remember, some came, it's amazing. I mean, if you look at their mugshot and then you look at them sitting out here after a year, they're 2 completely different people. And the beauty of it is they have to get a job, which, you know, I think is where all this really gets its fuel. You got to get people working. You have to get them doing something. You got to get these kids saying, okay, you painted it, you're going to overpaint it. You're going to paint it over. You're going to take it, you're going to take the paint off. You're going to fix the damage, whatever it is. So you get them involved in helping fix the problem. But when we came to you for that, it was not a new program like nationally or even statewide, but I think what we proposed was new. It was certainly new for our area. It has worked great. The judge was then able to get a grant, because the hardest thing to find is good rehab for female offenders, female addicts. And so we now have a place in Indianapolis that we have a couple of beds at, that are Vermilion County beds, okay? And the program's kind of young, but I think so far we've got 100% success rate in it. Again, you have to buy in, okay? You have to agree to follow the rules. You got to get a job. You got to go to meetings. You got to do these things. So if we can keep, and this is not going light on crime, trust me. I mean, this is how do we figure out how to redirect these people's energies from committing new crimes to, hey, I got a job, you know, maybe for the first time in my life, and I like it, I'm making money. And so these people come back and they're positive. this program, I think, I mean, I'm just speaking for myself here, but I think I'm speaking for everybody involved in it. I want to be judged on the results of it, okay? Because I think, like we hear about the economic director, it sounds like maybe we're getting a new one. I think all of these things should be being judged on results, okay? Performance. So we're now at May, okay, basically. It's an April meeting, but really our next month is May. So 2021, we need to spend the judge's grant money in 2021. But 2021 is like this smashed year because A, we don't have much school year left until the fall would start. And two, we're already, you know, a third of the way through the year. So I think if we're going to do this, I would ask that, and I know you guys are limited to what you can do, but I would ask this, that this be looked at as a 21-22 program, that we be given 18 months. So when we come back in September for our budgets, the judge and I, that we don't have to say, okay, can we have this in 2022? Because I think this is really, if we get what we need, I think it's really going to get rolling in the fall of this school year. Okay, it's going to take a couple, 3 months to get going. So I view it as a 1.5 year program right now. And hopefully next year, hopefully sooner than that, but hopefully next year, the judge and I can both come back to you and say, okay, look, it didn't work. Didn't work. So thanks, but we're not doing that anymore. Hopefully we say, look, here's our statistics. This thing is really working great. Okay, hopefully we can bring in community people who have seen it work. The schools can come and say, it's working great. We hope you do it again. Okay, hopefully we can bring in people who we do community service for that say those kids came out, they behaved, they were watched, and they did what they needed to do. So I look at this as the remainder of 21 plus 22 program. All right. Now, like 20 minutes ago, she said I get to the numbers. So right now, the person that I believe the program would work best for is the person that's done the footwork, and that's Tia. She is now my 4D director, okay, and so she has her salary and benefits and all that are already on your books. So we know the cost of what she costs the county now, and what I am suggesting is that we pull her out of the 4D, not full-time in 21, but pull her out of the 4D. I'm going to have somebody replace her in 4D, and that she run this program. All right. The grant money can be used in 21. Her part of the salary that would still be attributable to child support, we get back at 66%. So if you look, I've got her total cost numbers. That's what she costs for 1 year, and that's all in. That's perf, that's insurance, that's everything. So right now we are at, if we look at this as starting in May, let's say, we'd be looking at basically 2/3 of a year, which would be 2/3 of that number. Here you go, I've got one left. You got it? So from if you look at that, 2/3 of the year minus the judge's 20 plus expenses, all right, and that's going to give you a rough estimate of what this thing is going to cost in 21. In 22, it would be, I mean, I can't control what the insurance costs and things are in 22, but that would be kind of the whole cost in 22. Assuming what I hope doesn't happen, and that's assuming that we can't find any grant money to apply to this, okay? That would kind of be a worst case scenario. My hope is, and Tia will use her energy to do it, and I know the judge will, and I will, hopefully we can find grant money to offset some of this cost. Okay, we've been very, we work grants hard. Okay, I've got a couple of grants in my office that pay for salaries and expenses. And so hopefully we can find something to apply to this. But I think right now, this program is something that we should try. And then in 22, you know, hold me to, okay, what are the results? Because if we're going to take this thing into the future, and hopefully we will, then we need to answer with those results. We need to come back to you, hopefully saying we've got some additional grant money, and here are the results. So if you have any questions for me, sorry I took a long time, but...
And just so you know, grant applications for these types of grants, at least through the courts, and I think through ICJI, which the prosecutor would have access to as well, they usually don't release those applications until June or July. So at this point, we can't even tell you what we would be eligible for because they haven't released those opportunities. But there are several every year. We just have to find a way to make it fit as far as the applications.
So are you actually needing funding for anything in 2021?
Yes. Yes. I think we have to view this almost as, I mean, I haven't done the math down to the exact dollar, and the judge and I can get together tomorrow and do that if it's needed. I think right now it's that number, okay? But if you approve that number, then we're not spending all of that in 21 because a third of that year is already gone, okay?
And the grant money that you receive will also go towards that as well?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
really we're looking at like a third of that.
Probably. That would be my guess.
For 2021.
Yeah.
And then you're saving money and keeping them out of the courts, right?
Yes, sure hope so.
More than you're gonna spend here.
Yeah.
So in the short term, Bruce, it'd be more of like a pilot program this year and a half.
Yeah, I think that it is. I think it is. I think that's the perfect word for it. It's a pilot program that everybody involved fully intends to make successful.
If it is successful and the rate that we have to pay for juvenile detention goes down, could that possibly be monies that we could move over towards this program?
I think that's possible. I think we've also talked about making it at some point a standalone where if we can get enough of a grant source that we know is going to be a renewing, because the grant that I have is a one-time thing. But if we can find a grant that's a renewing grant, or even just if there are people that get involved with this program and then donate to this program, then we can get maybe some funding sources and make it its own nonprofit.
Maybe the council could maybe eventually step in and help fund this, because if you're keeping one, kid out of this, I think it's more worth it, and I think you can even somewhat model 80%.
Right.
I mean, we're paying for the process no matter what.
Right.
We're just paying for the expensive one right now. So.
Yeah, exactly.
I would hope that and I'm sorry, I've got allergies that really beat me up. I would hope that when I come back in September on our budgets, that we'll sharpen our pencils and really drill down on exactly what we need, what we have found for 2022. Okay, but I don't want to bring you a bad surprise. I think worst case scenario is going to be that number or very close to it.
For the whole year.
For the whole year of 2022. Now, in September I may say, you know what, we found out we really need these couple of things. Okay, we got to pay some rent somewhere, or we got to pay. I don't know that right now. But I think with Katie's help, and she has agreed to help us. I'm not giving you another job. You don't need that. But she's been so open, and she's, you know, whatever documents she has and however. So we're going to shortcut this thing hard. You know, we're going to go.
I've seen the contract, I've seen my stipulations of her sentencing. I've got it all already. She's already given me all of that and so much more just with her knowledge of this program. When I originally went to her, my nephew had to go through her program. That's how I actually heard about it. So I went to her and I said, because my brother's like, this is awesome. He said, what do? You need to go talk to her. So I went straight to her and he was right. What she does something.
Bruce, is this, I guess it might be a dumb question, I'm not an attorney or pretend to be one, but is this I mean, this is a legal process, or you know, if a child commits some sort of offense and they get in trouble for truancy or something,
right.
There's a specific penalty for that in the Indiana code, I would suppose.
Right.
And this circumvents all that or bypasses it at whose discretion? The judges?
The judge.
Okay.
The judge and the prosecutors. I mean, right now, if you're, let's say, 14 and you were caught, you know,
stealing radios or something.
Yeah,
out of a car.
stealing the intercom at the ball game. Okay, but we recover it, and your parents kind of take ownership of it and you, and say, we'll straighten this out for you. Okay, then we can work with that. Okay, you can do what's called informal adjustments through probation. We can divert things. So there's discretion in the process where
there's no mandatory
really,
sentencing or something of that nature for graffiti.
But I think where we're really, and I'll just speak for myself, I don't want to include the court in this, where my office is really inflexible is where it is a crime with a victim, okay, and not just you painted my porch, a physical victim, okay. That's some of the domestics, you know, sexual assaults, things like that are not going to find their way into this program.
Now, do you expect, and I don't mean to ask a bunch of questions, but I guess I just think of things, but in this case, it'd be a new program here. So you're going to have kids that have already went through the process once. Right. They're already in trouble for something, but they served out their time or did something. Right. Are they eligible for this?
Yes. I mean, if you folks give us the green light, all right, then one thing we're going to do immediately is look at our status offenses, okay, and see what do we have here that is a status offense, you know, based on age, that we can immediately route to this. Okay, now they may have an attorney involved. We'll talk to that attorney and say, hey, look, we want to try this. I guarantee you the attorney's going to be like, that sounds wonderful, okay, because they no longer have to come to court. And we'll work with the judge then to get that directed there, you know.
And in
so I think we have cases right now, today, that we could, if we could magically make this a working program tomorrow, that would be in that program tomorrow.
In cases like the 17, or you have a certain percentage, Katie, is that right, Katie? The children that may go through this process and do well, somehow they make another mistake. Are they allowed to go through it twice?
So we work primarily with first-time juvenile offenders, and we make exceptions.
Occasionally, okay.
We base it off of, and the way I determine it is their previous involvement in peer court. If they did well the first time, and a year or two past, they make another mistake, they're kids, right?
Right.
We do it. You know, if they cause a ton of problems the first time and don't complete, no, they're not eligible.
Right.
But I was told once by an assistant state's attorney that the goal of juvenile court is not to get the conviction, but to do what's in the child's best interest. And I follow that philosophy. And so it's the individual kid's best interest that you look at. And is it in their best interest to do peer court again, or were we not helpful the first time? And so it can be very individualized.
When the prosecutor comes back with once the results of this are in and the prosecutor comes back and says, hey, this is really working, we have positive results, do you see those positive results year after year? I mean, your program doesn't.
We have always been consistently at like a
Good.
90% success rate.
That's what I want to hear. I mean,
Yeah.
you guys don't have like, well, it's a really bad year, half the kids.
I've been there for 13 years, and I do the statistics every year, and
It's
we've
always
never
good.
fallen to below 90%.
So you could expect
Tough
positive
standards.
results.
Yeah.
I mean, I can do it.
Got
Not
big shoes
us.
filled.
It's the kids we're working with. They're choosing to show up every day. And
good
it's my
news.
staff. We knock on doors. We encourage. We do what it takes to help them be successful. And so, whereas the kid, it's also the people you put into place to support the kids through that program.
Bruce and Jill, is that something, then you can get us a number for the rest of 2021 of what you would need for an additional
Sure.
appropriation on that?
Sure.
And then, like you said, the rest would go in the budget for the next year?
I'll get with the judge tomorrow and find out the nickels and dimes in her grant, and we'll plug that in, and then we'll get that back to you immediately. On what 21 will cost.
What would it cost?
What's like a guess over the last couple of years, how many kids would be in this program a year based if we've done the last few years? Just like
I think right off you're probably looking at there's a couple of answers to that, Marty.
Okay.
One is the cases that we actually filed, okay, and we know those, but we run into some cases, and let's say hypothetically you have 5 kids at a playground and beer in a backpack, all right, and of course all 5 say it's not mine, it's somebody's, but you can't prosecute all 5 based on thinking, well, since nobody, so there are some cases that don't get filed, all right, those cases could be routed through this, but I think
We have also just board members too, this doesn't include anything that the school would have run.
right.
We have had basically over 60 cases nearly every year. This year, we're almost at 20 already. Juveniles. We had, back in, I think it was 17 here, we had 22 ASAP cases that were sent, and they would first come to me and then go to the alternative school. I have seen 0 the last few years because there, I think, has been an issue with
They
the
don't have
alternative
a
school.
teacher.
So, I mean, that's another 22 kids that could go through this program. And that doesn't include the cases that they diverted through
So
an
then you're
informal
90.
adjustment.
I would say, Marty, that I would expect in a full 12-month period of time, I'm guessing 50-ish, somewhere in that. Maybe more, maybe a few less. But that would be my guess right now. You think that's a fair number?
Yeah, I think so, and I think if
Because we don't, I'm interrupting, I'm sorry. We don't really know what the school, I mean, like, what does the school have kind of backed up that they want in this program? We don't know that number yet.
one thing that we haven't pushed on really was the volunteers. As Marty can attest to, and I think some of you probably know too, the new diplomas require volunteer hours. The people who are jurors in this program, they can get volunteer hours. I mean, this can be a good opportunity not just for the kids that are in trouble, but also for kids who want to be a part of this program and get volunteer hours and just participate.
It's a
Like
great
National Honor
point.
Society, I know National Honor Society kids have to have so many community hours to stay involved in National Honor Society. I was gonna talk to Becky because like their junior leaders, they have to have so many community service hours to stay within the junior leader parameters of 4-H. So it was stuff that, these other kids need that they may not have the opportunity to get to, because this being after school hours, they can do it.
Hopefully by involving those, I think that's a great point, Tia and Judge. Hopefully we can get some of these kids who are the offenders to kind of become more part of the community. as opposed to the rebel with the paint can. You know, maybe he sees that, hey, these people were nice to me and I enjoyed that, and I'd like to be on that jury. I'd like to be the defense lawyer or whatever. The one thing, and then I will quit, but the one thing that I think is really, really great that Katie does is they use the Danville Area College up there. So she's getting kids that may not have family that says, hey, let's go check out the college. Let's go walk around it. Let's look at it. You know, and so she takes these kids and they're like, wow, this is nice.
Well, they may have never got that opportunity.
I'd like to
otherwise.
go here someday. Well, you can't do it in jail. You know? So I think that's wonderful that you're doing that.
The biggest thing with that is it gives them that first introduction, so they're more likely to step foot again and feel comfortable going and accessing the resources at the community college because they have ownership of it because they work there. They volunteer there and spend time. I had one kid last year, I worked a plant sale with him, and as she's carrying plants out to some lady's car, she came back with a whole folder full of scholarship forms. I can go in next week and this lady will help me fill these out. Okay, what time are we going? And I picked her up and drove her there because, like, if you have an appointment to do scholarships with somebody in the financial aid department, we're going to make sure we're sitting there on time. You know, so those type of connections too. You know, you make sure that these kids are being successful.
So, Katie, as a community, I mean, we could put money towards this program, but as a community, we must be able to volunteer as a church community for them to come to do the work. So what type of problems do you have, or how do we address the community part as far as saying, hey, Cuba Christian Church needs 40 hours of work? I think in ASAP program, when we had it, we've had some difficulty trying to find work for the kids to do. In a small community like this, how do we solve that problem?
Sure. So litter pickups are always my go-to when I'm slow on events, right? Like, let's meet at this park and we're going to do a litter pickup, and they're awesome because you can work by yourself, you get some one-on-one time with each kid, and kids can put their headphones in and just work, right? But beyond that, like, my biggest problem is I don't have enough kids to send out to the things we get asked to do.
Okay.
You know, when you're offering free help, you know, and I'm not asking, you know, like, let us come set up, let us tear down, you know, like, that's what I'm really good at, is like the before and after setup, cleanup work. And beyond that, it's not even the work. Sometimes we do, for example, Walk a Mile in Horseshoes, our Vermilion County Resource Center, they work with sexual assault victims. And every year they do a fundraiser where you walk a mile and then put on high heels and they have to walk a mile and you raise money, right? You know, I take a bunch of kids there and some of them hold signs along the route and others just walk. The basketball tournament, I'm going to get the thing wrong, some of you may know, but it's the NJCAA, I think, tournament that we host every year. It is amazing. I asked, hey, can we come pick up the bleachers after every game? Not because I needed the activity. I wanted my kids to go watch basketball. You know, that's so, you know, we spend 15 minutes cleaning bleachers after a game, but these kids get to go in with a tag and watch basketball for an afternoon.
Okay.
You know, so it's not necessarily the work, it's the involvement of it. How do we involve our kids in the stuff that we're doing? And our community is awesome. If we go do a chili supper, you know, they're always made, you know, our favorite one is the Kiwanis Pancake Dinner. We serve over 1,500 people that day, clearing tables. But, like, my kids are there clearing tables, refilling syrup, and eating just more pancakes than they know what to do with. And that's my big thing is, hey, we're going to work for a little while, but make sure you get pancakes. And then every Kiwanis that's there come up to them and say, have you eaten your pancakes yet? You know, so these kids are feeling a part of it, and they're feeling some more supportive. So it's not necessarily like these kids are doing really hard work, it's that they're feeling a part of whatever's going on. And that's my big thing. So if your church has something, maybe they only can work, you know, maybe there's 10 or 15 minutes worth of work they can do, but then they can participate in that event, and that counts. That's really important.
It's a lot of community outreach. I would be leading my feet with the different community places that I could go and figure out who I could talk to, where I needed to go. I've already talked to a handful of people just to get an idea of if they would even be willing to do extra help.
You can always wash fire trucks with the volunteer fire department.
Dude, that's important.
And I know
they
ASAP
love
did
it.
that.
How cool is that to go and be able to be up close and personal to a fire truck?
Yeah.
Police cars, go wash those for a little while. And then that's also a good, when you can do anything with the police, it's a great positive interaction between you and police. Which is why our tour of the jail is so important, because it's that positive interaction with law enforcement.
We'll have to wait till we get the new one done.
Well, I mean, my husband's in charge of our jail, and he says I am not getting back in with kids anytime soon. So,
I'm ready for that.
It'll be a while.
Well, thank you, Jill, and Bruce, and Katie. Appreciate your time. Tia?
I just want to make a statement. I graduated South Million in '86, and I was involved in home care workers. And we did counseling, and any kids that were in trouble in school, we would sit and actually talk to them one-on-one, just as students and ask them about how they were doing. And then it was also activities and
Thank you for that feedback. All right. And then you'll bring us a number soon.
Yeah, tell me exactly when you need it, so, you need it to actually.
Our next meeting is...
I'll need it by the 28th, or the 22nd.
You want it by the 22nd?
Mm-hmm.
Annie says by the 22nd. Thank you. All right. That is the last of our new business. Public comment, I think RJ's here to... You got a comment?
No, thanks, no. Yeah, so the commission, we had a meeting today. We're looking to have Ashley, I think we need a meeting about the 27th, is that right, with the building? Brenda, you were in there with the 27th. We need you guys to set a meeting, if you could, a special meeting by the 27th.
We're on the 27th.
On the 27th?
So Brenda sent out a copy of the lease agreement. There's no information yet filled in on that, but they're the 27th would be the meeting, correct, with the lease with actual amounts into it?
I'm trying to think of the guy's name. Andrew Mauser, maybe? With Baker Tilly. He sent some documents out in an email, and I think we're going to forward them to the council so you guys can see them. And the commission would like to have a work session meeting next week prior to that 27th meeting, discussing the jail things, maybe at that last budget in December that with maybe some cost going up. So we'd like to have a joint meeting or a work session with you guys at maybe the 19th, 20th, or 21st.
And the construction manager would be there from Vermont?
Yeah.
On that work session to discuss?
Yep.
Because I think there's some concerns with inflation cost and different things. Now that we have a construction manager, she's reran the numbers, is that my understanding?
Yeah, Michelle
For everything.
Mercer,
That there would be a time to ask questions about cost and budget for
I
the
know
jail.
Friday probably wouldn't be a good day because that'll be kind of like cleanup day. So Monday through Thursday, if that works for any of you guys, or a certain time works, commissioners could all work session.
What's the preference for during the day or at evening for a work session?
Doesn't matter to me.
Marty and I probably were working.
I'm sure, I'd have to check with Tim.
The
but
day
I've
next
written
week,
it
do you have?
pretty-
Preference on that.
Monday's my best evening. Does Monday work for
I have no
anybody?
problem.
I don't know. So,
So what they decide, and that can't.
Monday,
Okay,
the
I mean-
19th? I guess, what's the earliest that anyone, we could do? That way we're not here all night with...
Good. 3:30 on
Okay.
or earlier. I don't. Monday's a good day, actually not a bad day for me.
So 5? Okay.
So what, I mean, I can do it during the day anytime, whatever you want to do.
Maybe something earlier, I'm sure the other commissioners would be open for an earlier meeting. I don't look for it to be more than an hour, maybe a couple hours, I mean, it's more informative.
Okay. What about 5 o'clock?
Yeah.
Okay. 5 o'clock?
Yeah, I should be able to do that. I get it about 4:30, so I should be able to do that.
Okay.
The 19th?
The 19th at 5 o'clock.
5 o'clock.
It'll be a work session to ask questions about numbers for the jail.
Here, in this room?
Yes. Here.
And then if you guys could, schedule a special meeting for the 27th, you guys.
And then, so April 27th would be the actual vote on the lease numbers.
What time?
That has to be earlier because the commissioners have a 6:30.
They have a 6:30 meeting? Okay, let's do 5:30? Without, because there's a commission meeting at 6:30. So,
We get it after our commission meeting, actually.
No.
No, we're good.
After 27th?
Yeah.
What time?
So April 27th at 5:30 would be the meeting for the approval of the lease and the amounts. So,
Just set out notices.
Yeah.
Thank
Yep.
you. Thank you, thank you.
So on the 27th, that you'll have amounts?
yes, the 27th will have amounts.
Will you, I have to have them by the 17th to have
I
them?
don't,
It's to approve the, to enter the lease.
So it's not the
It's not actual
No.
appropriating money, it's to approve entering into that lease.
Then we can send out that email that,
Sure.
Lawrence Thurmore sent out, we can send out.
One item that goes into that lease amount is how much we want to put down as like a cash payment. Because we put money back each year. Last year, we typically put about 1.2 million back from certified shares and public safety into the team jail fund. Last year, we only took money out of certified public safety, because with COVID starting, we were afraid of having greater cost. We did not move any money out of certified shares. We need to decide how much we want to take out of cash and not borrow into the bonds. So that is also an amount. I'm going to work with Brenda to get a schedule of what's available, and then we won't have to have it done by the 27th, but we'll have to agree on an amount that we want to put down as cash, and then make that appropriation at the next meeting after that. Okay? All right, so is there any other public comment? No? Thank you for coming this evening. And
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Yes.
All right. All those opposed? Okay. Meeting adjourned.
Who was the second?
I did.
Yeah.
You know, you were talking about the jail earlier. She was talking about the bonds.